So good morning and welcome to August's webinar, The New World of New Biz. So hello to everyone who's joined us previous webinars, you know the drill. And to those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. The aim of these webinars are to discuss everything that is happening in the world of agency, marketing and new business. And this week I have some fantastic guests joining me who I will introduce in a moment. But hello guys, just before I introduce you all, my name is Katie Street. I am the founder of Street. We are a agency that helps agencies to do new business. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the session. We've had some really great questions submitted. I'm not sure how busy today's going to be. We've got about 600 of you joined up. And because it's August, I'm not sure how many of you are actually going to join, but the number's going up. We're nearly at 100 already, so that's very positive. So before we start to dig into some of the questions and things that have been happening over the last month, I will welcome our fantastic attendees. Now, I'm going to do it in order that I can see it on my screen, so sorry if that isn't the same for you. But first of all, my lovely friend Mona. So Mona Nikzad joins us. Mona, give us a wave so everyone knows who I'm talking about. Mona is joining us from Organix, but actually also used to work in the world of agency. So she has head up new business. In fact, Mona stole my job.
Definitely not. Yes, and I was a second choice.
No, you weren't. So Mona knows a lot about agency new business, but now as Mona, remind me of your official job title so I don't get it wrong.
No worries. So I'm the digital and e-commerce strategist for Organix. Yeah. So for those of you who've got little ones, you probably know us quite well, but if you don't, we're the UK's #1 baby and toddler snack brand.
Yes, so and yeah, have been very, very busy during lockdown. So looking forward to hearing what you've been up to. And Mona has a perspective, having worked within the world of agency as well. We also have Martina Lacy. Martina is head of new biz and marketing at iCrossing, but has one of the most amazing CVs I have ever seen. And then when we were just chatting a moment ago, she was telling me all about, you know, when last time when she was on a panel at Cannes. So yeah, sorry guys, this isn't quite as glamorous as Cannes. But yeah, Martina, tell us a bit about where you've been previously.
Yeah, so I joined iCrossing in November, and before that I was at Mindshare, and before that I was at Maxis, which became Wavemaker. So I'm becoming one of those, an agency that went to another agency type people. And before that I was at Havas, looking after international new business.
Literally new business royalty. And we connected because Martina asked me for advice. I'm thinking, oh my God, Martina, you should be giving advice. Yeah.
Always learn more.
Yeah, exactly. We're all always learning and solving, not selling. I like my nice new picture. And last but not least, the fantastic Dino, and I'm going to try and say your surname correctly, Myers-Lamptey.
That's correct.
Yeah, so Dino, also someone I think we connected last year, was it? And I was having a whinge about the lack of diversity on agency boards, and that's kind of how we started chatting, and then we've kind of kept in touch ever since. But Dino, tell us a bit about what you're up to, and again also been working at agencies, you know, for the majority of your career, and pretty punchy ones.
Yeah, exactly. I began my career at Mediacom, and then I've also worked at Mike Leaders and Bednash, Rocket, part of PhD, and the Seven Stars, and most recently I was managing director of Mullen Lowe, it's a media hub. But for the past 18 months or so now, I've been running my own company called The Barber Shop, which officially launched last November. But yeah, we describe ourselves as a strategic-led creative company that tries to bring media, creative and technology close together, working for purpose-led brands or brands seeking purpose.
Love it. Very good. And yeah, you've been doing some great things since, you know, well, during lockdown and obviously prior to. So again, come with lots and lots of experience in the world of new business. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you've got questions, please submit them using the little Q&A at the bottom. We will, as we do every month, be running a poll at the end just to see, you know, what's been happening in the world of new business for you guys. It's really interesting data, and I'll also share a bit of an update when we're doing that on the data that we received last month, so we can see how things are evolving and changing. But I'm going to kick off with a question that literally just came in. Now, Martina, it has been directed at you, but I think everyone's going to have an opinion on this. So the question that's been submitted, which we've spoken a lot about prospecting to date, but I think this is really interesting because the world of pitching has obviously changed dramatically. So the question is, how do you think the efficiency of the pitch process how has it been affected by everything that's happened?
It's interesting. So I think there's always whinging about the new business process and kind of all the rounds that we have to go through, and if it's always really necessary. We recently did a final pitch a couple of weeks ago, and it was our first time doing it via Zoom, so it was all online. And we were first taken aback by how little time we were given. So we were only given an hour to do our presentation. And we're used to having like, an hour and a half, and you'll have half an hour for Q&A, but this was presentation and Q&A in one. And actually we did get through everything that we wanted to get through in that time. But what was missing was that kind of rapport time. So that time that you have to kind of get coffee, say hi, do that classic earmarking thing where it's like, you're going to go talk to that client, you're going to talk to that one. So we didn't really have the ability to do that bit, but we were actually quite impressed with how actually during that time we could get everything across that we wanted to say. So it's a trade-off between kind of getting straight to the work, then actually doing the whole people love people thing. Not necessarily being able to do that is the downside.
Yeah, I think it is very, very different pitching online. There's definitely a big part about speed, though. I found that it's fast, trying to do everything in the online environment at speed, but you've got to, I actually think, and people spoke about this quite early doors, saying, you don't need to kind of plan as much. Personally, I think you need to plan even more, because you don't get that human, connection that you usually get in the room. I'm very good at usually going, oh, I love your watch, or I was always the fluffer in the room when there's a pitch, trying to warm it up for everyone and be hopefully likable. But you can't do that as well online. It's really tough.
But it's also even just like using the platform. So for this pitch, we were using Skype, and that's probably like the only one we don't use. So we use Zoom, we use Teams, we have Slack, but Skype wasn't the one that we used. So when we were running rehearsals on Skype, it was even figuring out like, how do you actually put the deck up, and who can you see when you're presenting? So all that kind of stuff, it got a lot more complicated. But you can have Slack open. So normally if someone's running over, you have no way to be like, shut up. Yeah. But this way you could be like, you're going over, stop.
Yeah. An awkward person winking in the room usually. Yeah, you've got like Slack or WhatsApp or something, you can message people now. Mm-hmm. I know you've run a pitch during lockdown because you guys have been changing quite a bit. I mean, your plans, I know, in fact, I've spoken to Mona and Dino already on our podcast, so keep a listen out for the podcast, because we dig in even more than we are probably doing today. But Mona, I know you had already planned to launch an online shop. I mean, thank God you had, I guess, and what great time for you to get it launched. But you also ran the pitch for that during lockdown?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, an online store was something we've wanted to do for a really long time in the business, and it was just never the right time. Back in January, pre-COVID, we thought, okay, this is the year, we'll do it in the summer. And then by the time we sort of came around to look for an agency and a partner, it was around early March, just as everything started to kick off with COVID. So it was definitely a weird experience trying to meet new agencies, have those chemistry meetings over the phone, over Skype. It was really different. The control freak in me had to let go a lot, because I obviously couldn't go and see offices and see their setup. But actually what it allowed for was probably a lot more communication than we would have had if I just, normally with pitches, you have the chemistry meeting and the diary, then you have a follow-up and maybe one more touch in, and then the pitch, and then everyone goes away. But we actually, through doing it virtually, we were keeping in touch pretty much every other day with all the partners that I was talking to. So I ended up selecting an agency and finding that actually we had a much more closer relationship than we would have if we just gone through the standard face-to-face pitch process.
Nice. That's so funny, because someone called Luke McQuillan has just submitted a question saying, how do you find building relationships prior to the pitch via the Zoom pitch? I think for me, I'm not sure that part of it changes. I think, essentially, it's all about keeping an open flow of conversation and really asking lots and lots of questions, obviously without being annoying and, you know, submitting them too often. But I would always try and collate a whole load of questions, send them across, and then say, look, if it's easier, do you want to jump on a call to chat these through? And just try and have those kind of scheduled check-ins prior to. I'm not sure that that's any different, but I think it's more needed now. And maybe, you know, it's one of the things that I certainly remember in the past, you know, before, when we were still in the physical world, but that we once pitched for some business, quite a big property company in London, and it was to onboard them from their existing agency. It was to do with personalization and website updates, blah, blah, blah. And they said we were the only agency that asked loads of questions beforehand. The other three didn't ask questions and didn't ask because they hadn't offered a meeting. No, they didn't ask. They just sort of said, okay, I will come and pitch you, and they didn't ask lots of questions beforehand. Which I mean, obviously we did win it because we said, can we come and see you? I mean, obviously you can't do that now, but you can. You always ask. I think sometimes when you're so busy, especially if you've got lots of pitches on, you forget some of the really important things, and it is so important to ask for some FaceTime. Now, obviously that's via Zoom rather than in person, which is actually much easier to secure. So just making sure that you've got those touch points and you're not forgetting to ask for them. It's almost like, it's really good to have like a little checklist here, I've got my pen, to kind of tick off things that you must do to keep in touch and build a relationship prior to the pitch. It's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think because you know that at the moment there is no face-to-face meeting coming, if agencies go silent on me, I tend to worry. So I'd rather they keep in touch, whether it's even just asking, you know, 1,000,001 questions, than just disappear. And then because I start to get quite nervous about what's coming. Is anything coming? Are they still working on it? So yeah, I'd say definitely keep in touch for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. Dino, anything to add on the pitch process?
Yeah, I've got a few things to add actually that might be a bit contrary to what we've been talking about actually, but the first thing is that, you know, during this period I've had the kind of like the pleasure, I guess, of sitting on both sides, in the sense that I've actually worked with clients actually who've been going through a bit of a pitch process themselves. So it's very interesting when you're on the client side as well and you're reviewing agencies coming forward, and actually I think from that experience, you know, I think it's incredibly difficult to pick an agency, you know, remotely like this, mainly because I think that it's a little bit staged and rehearsed in terms of, you know, how we come across, in terms of, you know, I think everything you mentioned, Katie, I think is all important things that agencies have to do, you know, have your checklist of things to say, ask the right questions, all the rest of it. But actually when you're sitting, you know, at the end where everyone's got that same kind of checklist, then actually really it's the little things that you usually pick up on in a room, how they work together as a team, that you cannot get through, you know, this kind of, you know, webinar type relationship. I mean, I think that the interesting thing is about this whole existence that we're in is that it lets certain personalities shine, in terms of, you know, extroverted kind of personalities, people that like the camera, the microphone, the conch. But actually a lot of those people who are different kind of thinkers, the people that work and spark off other people in the room who say something and it triggers something and then it generates another idea, you're losing all of that in this kind of, you know, this kind of existence that we're in. And I think that, you know, you can very easily get an agency to feel their best kind of, you know, stage team in this environment, and they'll come across excellent. But actually, you know, digging beneath that, I think it's very, very difficult. And I think that really, in terms of when you choose an agency, and also I'm speaking from a perspective where, you know, we generally don't pitch. And I think that, you know, the reason why we don't pitch is not because we don't like to, but I think the pitch process is a little bit broken, you know, and it suits certain type of companies. So, you know, we like to say we present rather than just pitch, because I think, you know, really what you're looking for in the pitch process, you're looking for people, you're looking to understand the process that the company used to actually get to great ideas, and also the purpose of the company and what they stand for. I'm not sure that all those things really shine in the usual pitch processes.
No, it's what I would like to see, and I'm not sure, well, you guys tell me if you've seen or done anything, is something that's a bit more innovative, that's you know, different, that, because in the physical world, there were, you know, I'm always one talking about how do we level up? How do we, you know, some of the stuff that you're talking about that, you know, if we're not able to do what we were doing before, and the physical relationship side of it's gone, what can we do in order to get remembered? Or, I mean, Mona, what made you pick some of the agency that won? Was there anything that they did that was really special, or how were you swayed?
Yeah, so when I look back at actually all the agencies that I've ended up working with, they've always come to me and approached me with just a very clear offering. So, despite potentially being a full service agency, they don't say absolutely everything. It's not an autobiography of all the services that they offer. They've approached me based on one service that they think that they could do a really good job for the brand. And when I get emails, obviously everyone gets a lot of sales emails. The ones that always stick out to me are the ones that come with a really clear single message. So, we do this, and we've done it with X, Y, and Z, and we'd love to talk to you about it. And that's how I found our partner that we ended up working with the online shop with. She actually emailed me months and months before we were ready to talk. And normally if I see a good email, I'll just file it in my inbox, and when I'm ready to do a new project, I'll go back and have a look through potential people that have contacted me. And yeah, she stood out in my mind because I remembered that there was a woman who contacted me from an agency that, in my mind, that they did online stores. That's what they did, and they did them for brands in my sector. So yeah, when I contacted her and reached back out, we ended up having a chemistry call, and on the call we ended up speaking for like an hour and a half because there were so many other services they offered and she talked to me about. But had she not, if she had talked about all of those things in the initial email that she sent me, she wouldn't have stood out, and I probably wouldn't have even read through the email because no one wants to read through reams and reams of paragraphs.
Yeah. Too much. Dino, there's been some great questions already submitted for you here. So there are a couple of things that have been picked up on. One is that you say that you don't pitch, you're upfront with brands and you say we don't pitch but we present. What's the difference between presenting and pitching in your mind?
Yeah, I think the difference is you're answering a very specific kind of set of questions when you're presenting. And you're not just going through kind of like a standardized kind of like a process to respond to, which often involves things like a very heavy kind of procurement-led process, which is probably asking questions that are not necessarily suited for the model and service that you offer. So in terms of presenting it's about telling the client about how you work and your process, which often, like in our instance, is designed to be really collaborative and work with actually other kind of like specialists and experts. So it isn't just going, oh, we're one agency that does everything for you. It's about designing something specific for your challenge and your what your question is. So often the pitch process presents questions that they kind of like know that selection of agencies can probably have a good go at answering. And that's what they try to find in terms of on the shortlist. But actually, that might not necessarily be the complete set of questions that they need answering. So I think that in terms of presenting is very much, listening first of all to understand what the real problems are, and coming back with, well, this is how we do things and how we think is kind of like relevant to your your challenges. And I guess in terms of the key difference in terms of us and everyone else is, we're strategic led, and we aim to solve the biggest kind of client problems. So wherever they may be and span across media, creative, and technology. And we're not kind of governed by how much the client spends as such. So we might just go, right, actually, hang on a minute, you need to get and work with this particular specialist that does this particular thing. And we're happy to do that. And I don't think that traditional agencies will really ever answer a brief like that because of the mechanism of the way in which they are funded.
I'd love to see if one good thing could come out of, COVID-19. Well, not one good thing, obviously, out in the world of new business marketing, I'm talking about. That it changes that process from the client defining the problem and the agency answering it. By the sounds of it, Dino, you're working in the way I think most agencies should and want to be working, where you're helping the client define the problem and actually creating the brief for yourself to a certain extent. You're there helping them solve, not just a yes agency responding to an RFP where everything's already been defined. Because I don't think you've got to think about it like a normal, I think we've spoken about this previously, but like having a normal relationship, like it isn't having a normal relationship in life, if you're getting married or dating someone, it isn't one person going, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And, that the other person going, oh, okay. I mean, maybe it is in some relationships, but
It's when you date me. I'm joking.
But it's not a great start of any relationships. I just really don't think that that's how pitching should be anymore. I mean, Martina, I know you do a lot of RFPs, and probably more than anyone respond to the more normal pitch process, or certainly have done, as I have done in my career. Are you seeing more? I know this is something that's been talked about for a long time, but I'm certainly starting to see with a lot of our clients that it is changing, and they're trusting agencies to help them define the problem a lot more. And there's all this talk about consultancy or agency, and
yeah, I think that there was a really, so when Dino was talking earlier, I was thinking it's definitely like a pre-COVID, post-COVID world at the moment. But pre-COVID, there was a nice trend that was starting to emerge more, where there were quite a few agencies where we would do the standard like RFI at the beginning and maybe an RFP. Then there would be like a session where we would actually come together. So it would be not just the pitch team of the best of the agency, but the actual client team that we were putting forward to work with them on their brands. And they would spend a day together kind of working on a problem or building a campaign together, so they could see how we'd actually worked as a business and how we would work with them. And I thought that was really nice, because it also made us think, do we actually want to work with these guys? Because sometimes there are some clients that you think you're going through, you're like, they're going to be a nightmare client. Not always my problem. I win and move on. But it was a nice way to see how both work together. And I was seeing that across a couple of sectors, which was quite nice. So I think if we could get back to that, I think that would be a really nice place to evaluate, because maybe it's like how we all learn. Like, some people can maybe do a great written submission, get up to speak, and they can't necessarily say what they need to say, or they can't do a good written submission. But when you're there in the room working together, you can see, I actually want to work with these people. And so I think that was a real nice evolution that was starting to happen. And I really hope that comes back in, because I think that's how, as Dino was also saying a bit, we can show our value a bit more, because I think we get commoditized when we're stuck in an Excel sheet and a number. And then if that is all we do, that's how we'll always be judged on what our value is.
Love it. So, not that I don't want to talk about pitching for the whole session, because I love pitching because I'm a big show off, but there are lots of other things to talk about. Martina, whilst I've got you, one of the things we spoke about, so from all agencies that I've ever worked at, it's really hard, we all need to, and I guess this kind of maps back to this, being a bit more upstream and helping develop the brief. So it's super important for agencies to be seen as thought leaders, to promote their individuals, obviously getting them on stage or getting them to write content for your website, so that you've got some really useful, helpful content that's going to help you, not just push out to your market and use that content to, reach out to people with, but also to, to do the inbound, to pull people in. Something I have not always struggled with. I've had my own little tricks, which we can talk about, but it is often really, really hard to get the time and the commitment from the agency, because it can't just be the sales and marketing team creating all of the content. Mona, you'll remember us having to do this back at RedWeb. But we spoke about a marketing program that you have introduced, which I hope you don't mind me asking you about. You have is it called the 1MT?
1MT. Yeah, and I can't take credit for introducing it. I wish I could. It was there when I joined, but I've been cradling it. So 1MT stands for One Marketing Team, and basically what we do is we have like a point system, and for any piece of content that someone in the agency creates, so that content could be anything from a thought piece, it could be giving us photos for our Instagram account, it could be writing an opinion piece, it could be doing some video content. You accumulate points, and at the end of a quarter, the person that has the most points gets £250, and then the winner for the year gets 1,000, and then the team of the year gets 500 for a party to kind of celebrate all the great work they've done together. And why I think it's really great is that we do get content from across the agency, but also from different levels of seniority. I think very often it'll be quite top heavy, so you only have the heads of that are writing things, but this this is a nice way for people to do it all across the agency. And like, for example, today is our Takeover Tuesday on our Twitter account. And so Ruby is tweeting for iCrossing today. And she, I think, gets 200 1MT points, or if it's less, it's now 200 Ruby. So she gets 200 for doing that for the day. When we were celebrating Pride virtually, we were asking people to submit their favorite Pride photos from over the years when we had Pride celebrations in person. Everybody got points for doing that. So it's just a really nice way to showcase our culture, but get people across the business really, really involved in what we're doing.
Amazing. And I guess that starts, Dino, to talk about something that you and I have spoken a lot about, which is the importance of showing the diversity of your agency. And I know that's something that you champion a lot. I mean, one of my biggest beliefs, and I'm sorry to anyone who's joined our webinars before if I always bang on about the same points, but it is a passion point of mine, but the importance of having diversity on your pitch team, on your board, to come up with different ideas and being, you know, Martina, exactly like you're saying, being able to involve, you know, the younger minds and the older minds, and you know, and everything else in between. How have you know, I know you've been a big champion of this, Dino, so how are the best agencies doing it, and what do you advise agencies to do to help showcase that? Because I do think it's more important than ever right now, especially with everything that's been happening in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that, you know, when you're choosing an agency, I think that, you know, back to what we're talking about in terms of pitching as well, you know, it's very easy to ask a specific question and find, you know, a ton of agencies that can answer that specific question. But really what you're trying to do when you're finding an agency to have a retained relationship with, you're trying to find thinkers that can respond to change and unknown things, questions that you don't even have currently in your mind. And that's really the best agency you can find. People who are, you know, aligned with your common kind of like values and, you know, your purpose, and can really think in an agile kind of creative way around, you know, all sorts of different problems. And that you stand a better chance if you have a diverse team that think differently, but also have this kind of like psychological safety about the way they work, where, you know, in a room, you'll see them interrupting each other, but getting that energy and just like working together, you know, having little disagreements, but still kind of coming together and actually generating some positive output at the end of it. And it's really hard to kind of like know that through the means in which we pitch at the moment. I think, you know, exactly what Martina said there, I think is a great thing in terms of, you know, the whole kind of like PR points, getting people, encouraging your company to get their points of views out there. Because if I'm a client and I'm doing a pitch process, you know, I want to not know what the performance team, you know, the CEOs and the people that get pushed in front of camera last minute to be like, hi, yeah, we're going to service you brilliantly. No, I want to know what they really think and how they really work. And actually, if you do a little Google and you find out, you know, what articles have they written, what their true kind of points of views, what is their real kind of values, that's the kind of agency you want to work with. And actually, if you encourage your company to go out there and talk and be open and comment on things, reply, respond, and all the rest of it, be themselves, then that's the best advert you can have for your company about how you truly work and what you truly believe in. So I think, you know, absolutely. And you know, when I started my career at Mediacom, they had a similar thing, which was, you know, PR points, and every quarter there was some kind of prize. And the thing that I found most surprising is how many big agencies I've worked at since who actively discourage this kind of like open kind of like, you know, commentary, because they're actually almost worried about, you know, what it might say and how it might disagree with some other client in the agency or the group. But it was always very good at, you know, at Mediacom when I started my career anyway. And also the 7 stars, you know, being independent, we were very vocal and got our voice out there. So that was, you know, a huge advantage. But I think in terms of diversity and everyone around the table, you know, it's clear and it's simple. Anyone who's in part of a creative business knows that it's about people, and it's about people who can think differently, problem solve, work together, work collaboratively. And if you look around and everyone looks very similar to yourself, then you've got a problem. And in the worst case scenario, that becomes the client's problem when they advertise and offend a load of people by doing it quite badly.
Yeah, it is, you know, to me, it's got to be one of the most important things. And the best way that you can showcase that up front without filling in an RFI and telling them is to push it through your marketing, exactly like you're doing, Martina. I think it's, you know, because of everything that's happened in the world, and just because it is a better way to work anyway, you get much more innovative ideas if you've got a diverse team of, you know, people with, you know, not just, you know, diverse in terms of race or gender or anything like that, but diverse maybe in their history and where they've worked and what they've done. And, you know, you've got to have that, because, you know, I think gone are the days where I don't know, you do still see it a bit, but that clients want a specialist, or we only want someone that's already worked in the automotive sector because they're because they're an automotive brand, because you're just getting the same ideas that all your competitors have had. I mean, how is that innovative? It just isn't. So yeah, I think I hope that's something again that is starting to change.
But you need both as well, Katie. Sorry, in terms of that
Right.
kind of like, expertise and specialism. You've got to value that as well in
Yeah.
terms of years of experience. But you just need the difference as well. You need the other kind of like creative output of someone coming with outside of that kind of box siloed thinking. The amount of clients that are looking for challenges and disruptive kind of business models and approaches, but yet they use traditional processes to try and find their agencies, and then find quite a traditional result at the end of it. It's pretty crazy.
No, I totally agree with you. The experience is always going to be important, of course it is, but you need to have that diversity of thinking within the group. I think anyway. I wonder if one of the things that I made me think, Dino, when you were chatting, is about and I don't know if anyone still does this. Mona, you might be able to tell us if you received them, but I know we have done them in the past, is the letter from the CEO at the beginning. Is that even still an important thing? Should it be a letter from the CEO? Should it be a letter from one of your interns? I don't know. I do definitely think it's changing. Less CEO letters at the beginning, I would say.
I remember. Sorry, just a little story. I remember when I started my career at MediaCom, there was a moment in a pitch, and I forget what client it was from. One of these massive clients, where the client actually challenged the CEO at the time in the pitch, and asked whether whether if they walked out of the room and asked someone about the agency's values, whether they would say the same thing that the CEO was saying. And it actually happened, and they did, which was great. But that's the kind of equivalent, which again, another interesting thing that you wouldn't get in this kind of virtual pitch kind of scenario. That kind of, you walk out to the floor and see how people are working and how they actually kind of like, the vibe in the place. So I think it's the equivalent of that kind of like, whether you do the agency, the CEO kind of letter, or you get, as you say, the intern's letter.
Yeah. I think it's got to be better, like you say. Now we're missing that walk around the office, and we don't know. Most agencies that I'm speaking to aren't planning to go back. Certainly the bigger agencies aren't planning to go back into the office until January. Some of them, Martina, I know that's different for you because you were saying you're just going back at the moment.
Yeah, we've got bits going back. So we're owned by Hearst, so we produce lots of great magazine titles, and they were struggling with the photos, so photo shoots, kind of not having spaces to do that. So our offices are open for most of the magazine staff to go back. But we're not planning on going back, I think, full guns blazing probably till about January. But I think similar to like what you were just talking about, that CEO note, it's interesting where so many times clients will say they want to meet the people who will work on the business. And so many times agencies don't do that. Like they still kind of really stack them with the most senior, most experienced. And my most recent wins before joining iCrossing were all down to the fact that we had some account execs there who were actually going to work on the business and didn't have the most polished answers, but were passionate about the brand, about the category, and the client really bought into them, and the fact that we weren't just trotting out these standard lines, but showing the real people. And I think the one thing we can't forget is, and I always say, is people generally like people, and that's what can really sell it sometimes. And there have been times when we haven't been the cheapest agency, but they really liked us and wanted to work with us as people, so they were going to find ways to make that happen. And I think even though it's harder virtually, any way that you can still try and get that connection with another person to kind of get your culture and personality across will always be a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, speaking from a client perspective, you're not really buying into just the services. You are buying into people, and it's so important that you get to meet the account team that you're actually working with, the people that you'll be working with. But just going back to before talking about diversity, and what Dino was saying, it really is. It does say a lot when you you meet a team and you can see people from all diverse backgrounds, experience, age, race. It makes you appreciate that actually you're potentially working with an open-minded, a well-rounded agency, and that's the most you can ask for as a client.
Definitely. I think one of the questions that, sorry, I'm trying to get through these questions. This always happens. And if we haven't got through them, I promise individuals that we will come back to you. But one of the questions that's been asked about how to, obviously when you're needing your team to help represent you and team, maybe that are younger or are more nervous or just aren't natural pitchers or aren't confident in their writing abilities. How on earth do you upskill them? Because it is really important that they are upskilled, and it is something that, and I can't deny the fact that when I've worked at agencies leading new business, we have fallen into the trap of putting your best team forward because they're really good, they speak and they present well, and you trust that they'll win you the business. But you can't scale doing that, and you can't, certainly as an agency that wants to grow, unless you're really small and you've got that perfect team and you have no aspirations to grow. Of course you can keep doing that, but most of us are growing. And how on earth do you I guess your training is important, but I don't know how you guys do that or have implemented plans to help with that.
So I would say that it's not about just putting your best team forward, it's about putting your actual team forward, which hopefully is your best team for that client.
Yeah.
I think the common mistake can be to field a team that the client then never sees past that, pitch win, which is just an awful common mistake. And I think that, if you get it right, you have the blend of the senior people, but you also have, the right level people. And that doesn't mean having the intern in the room, but, the people that will be doing the day-to-day on the client, the work, and you give them the role that is equivalent to what they will be doing and how the client will be experiencing them, in an actual reality, in a real world situation. And I think that, the only way people do improve is by getting that experience, within the room. So you've got to, find the opportunities to get them involved and actually empower them. Otherwise, you've made a mistake in your selection and how you're running that team in the first place.
Yeah, and practice, right? You've got to practice with them. You've got to, the people that you do think are brilliant, get them to shadow, get the more junior person to shadow them and get them on training courses and, whatever it might be. You've got to, I think, we've got to, like you say, empower them to do it and let them do it. But you also you can just chuck them in, and some people will. But some people.
I think I think that there's different kind of introvert and extrovert personalities, but the level of people that we should be recruiting in the industry are high. They are people that are competent enough to do a lot more than you expect and that you're currently getting them to do. And actually, the problem you have mostly with graduates is they feel they're not doing enough. Actually, in the early stages, and they want to be doing more. And they're pushing and asking to be doing more. And actually, I think the companies that get the most and grow the most are the ones that give them more and keep on throwing them more and more responsibility. And you find that these people rise quicker than you ever imagined, as long as your system and your structure is designed to accommodate for that. But I think that, the challenge that a lot of agencies have is when they get a little bit too big, there's hierarchies and there's problems of promoting people at the pace that they deserve. And that's when people leave. But if you can combat that, by giving them the opportunities and really just matching the right people to the right client. So, if you've got intelligence plus passion for that piece of business, then that's a winning formula. That will trump, someone with 5 more years experience.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's that idea of it not just being a pitch team, like Dino said. So if it's actually the team that come together. I think when I did global new business, the difficulty from those pitches where you'd have people from a different country flying in on the Tuesday, you rehearse Wednesday, Thursday you're in the room, there's no chemistry. Like, these people don't know each other. They might, but not very well. Whereas if this is the actual team who are going to work on the business, and actually I really like working with the more junior guys who are first kind of coming in. And I always say to them, like, if you don't know the answer to a question, no one in this team is going to stand there and watch you melt. So, someone is going to come in to support you and will have an answer. And it's just kind of making them have that confidence that everybody is in it together. It's not just down to them. And Dino's right. The only way they will get better is by having the experience, and they bring in a different viewpoint. So it's always good to have a mixture, always.
I mean, I've seen some terrible things in pitches, a long time ago, let's say, where people that were too senior were presenting things that more junior people should have presented because, the more junior person did the work for that presentation. And they failed because they didn't understand it on that level of detail that person who created the work, actually did. So, I think that's the worst case scenario where you should have literally stepped back and let that person shine. That happens too often. You need a team, as Martina says, you need a team that have chemistry between them, really understand it. There's some simple things you can do, like obviously prepare the questions, like who's going to answer what questions and things like that, in advance, to kind of like give people the confidence of when that question lands, you field the question to the right person and they nail it, and that's what I think how a good team operates.
Yeah, definitely. So Mona, this is one for you. Well, I guess it's kind of for everyone. So one of the things that we've spoken about a lot on the series so far is I guess the prospecting side of things. And because it's been so shaky, I think the good agencies are reaching out and having to we're all having to prospect harder than we ever had before to kind of develop new relationships, and lots of agencies have potentially lost clients, so they're trying to either recoup that revenue. So having a voice in the market and attracting new business has never been so important. A few questions, and Luke, this is going to help me answer your question as well. But in terms of your, I guess, new business approaches, have you had more or less, and have you seen a change in how people have been approaching you?
It's definitely gotten more. The emails are more than ever. So yeah, I would say the approach hasn't changed. I mean, I would get probably quite an equal balance between phone calls and emails, but the majority of time people are just emailing now or sending a message through LinkedIn. But yeah, email is definitely the way, and there's definitely been an increase in that. I mean, I probably get up to 20 sales emails a day from agencies and service providers.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, so how do you get cut through? How do they cut? What, I know you spoke a little bit earlier about this, but what do they need to do to grab your attention?
Short and sweet, literally. I mean, in a couple of sentences, say, what's the one thing that your agency is amazing at, or that you really want to work with Organix on, or the brand that you're contacting, and then a couple of examples of brands that you've done similar work for. And for me, that's always been the way to stand out. A really short email, doing a whole autobiography of all of the services that you offer as an agency. No one in this day and age, agency side and client side's got the time to write it or read it. So yeah, I would just say short and sweet.
Age-old problem though, isn't it? Like the amount of emails I get as well, and I am an agency for agencies, but mainly from tech vendors trying to sell me stuff, and I know it's automated, and I can't say that I don't use automation. I do use automation, but it's automated. It doesn't feel personal. They're just selling me their services and telling me about themselves. It literally does not interest me in the slightest. So one of the things I always advise our clients to do is to be identifying a problem that you think's happening, and you need to understand the industry and your client and have done your research. But if you can identify a problem and define how you're going to help them with the solution, so that might be an industry related problem, it might be a problem specific to that business if you've got time to really focus on that. But I think that's, so for me, that's the most important thing. I want, someone comes to me and goes, Katie, I know it's really tough for you to do X, Y, and Z. And do you know what? We've got the solution. And hopefully it is a problem that I've had. I'm so much more likely to respond to that than, hey, we're an agency and we've got these great clients. And even saying, what you're saying, well, I keep it short and sweet. I do think, you have to be a bit clever and think about your purpose and why they want to bloody hear from you in the first place.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I definitely think the problem, so in this case, this agency noticed that we didn't have a direct-to-consumer offering. So they had identified a gap or potential problem for us and contacted us. I'd say there's a really fine line between identifying a problem and an opportunity that's within maybe the sector or that brand's facing, then sending an email. I mean, nothing gets my back up more than when you've got 100 emails to go through. It's a hectic day with back-to-back meetings, and you get an email from an agency and they say, oh, we've been on your website and this is a list of things that's wrong with it, and we can help you fix all of it. Because to me, it's like, okay, that I don't need anyone extra to add work on for me. I'm probably well aware of maybe some issues on the site, or maybe something to do with our social media or our retailer visibility. So I'd say it's a very fine line, going in, identifying an opportunity and what your purpose is and how we could work together is great, but definitely steer away from maybe the criticism of all the things that are potentially wrong with your digital presence or your creative execution, because I think everyone at the moment is so busy, and those kind of emails tend to think, not today, just not today. I'll look at that another day.
Yeah, don't need it. Martina, how do you go out to approach? I mean, I don't know, are you still involved with that side of things? I think you probably are from our previous chats.
Yeah, I mean, we're really focusing on producing content at the moment and focusing on specific sectors and solving issues for those sectors, which has been successful for us. So we're seeing quite a few brands coming to our website based on things that we've been producing and putting out there report-wise. It's prospecting is a really funny one for me, because I don't like the idea of just calling up Mona and being like, hey, I'm from iCrossing, how can I help you? Because that is just annoying. And like you said, she's very busy. So it's kind of more actually knowing if there is a problem that we can help solve and coming at it that way. I think this makes a lot more sense. But also it takes longer than, it's a lot. It's, it's really easy to bash at a list of 500 brands and say, I'm going to call these people in 2 weeks, and you probably won't get anything back. But if you're focusing on a sector, what your agency can bring to that sector and try and make some meaningful relationships, I think in the long run, that's going to get you further along. People might not always want to hear that, especially during hard times when, it takes a bit longer to build those relationships, but just bashing the phone and calling generally about iCrossing is it's not going to get you very far.
Yeah. And occasionally you might get, you might get really lucky and hit someone that needs your services at the right time. And that has happened to me in the past, and it happens to my clients. But more often than not, the most important thing about what we do, and we help agencies do, and I know, Martina, you do this, and Dino, we've spoken about you doing this, and Mona, we've done it together, is actually building a nurtured list of prospects. Because, if you're, and that can be by, hosting webinars, it can be from, developing beautiful insight and content in the real world. You might have been hosting events or speaking at other existing events in certain industry sectors. It could be talking about a certain industry or talking about a certain service or whatever it might be. But you need to have all of those different, I call them kind of hooks, but different things that you can push out that are actually helping your audience. Because then in 6 months, 9 months, or even sometimes 2 years time, when that person they now understand you, they've trusted and bought into your content for the last however long, who are they going to come to when they do have something that needs solving, or they have a problem? They're going to come to you. And exactly like we said earlier, hopefully they're going to come to you and ask you to help them define the problem, as well as just being the answer to them defining the problem and you answering it. I think that's so important. And agencies who I speak to all the time, that we're really great at winning new business, we just need leads, and we need them now. The likelihood of you getting a lead from some random cold calling or some random outreach activity straight away, and it is done. We do that, and we've done it actually for a client quite recently, because we got our messaging on point, we understood a problem in the market, and we did a specific campaign all around that. And it will happen, but really what you're looking to do is, it's like a rolling ball, picking up more and more as you're moving along. That's really what new business is all about. So turn that off and don't talk, and don't have the hooks, and don't have the things that you can push out there. Someone else is, and they're buying, your prospect is buying and listening to someone else and not you. So that for me is the most important thing. So that's why your 1MT strategy, Martina, I think is so brilliant, because it is the most important thing, and having that content ready and waiting is is key to success of agencies, I think. So I'm going to dig through the questions because there's still quite a few, unless you guys have seen one that you want to specifically answer. So this one here from someone called Alex Holden. Since he works for a tech vendor, but lots of clients at agencies, and they get lots of demo chats, which go well. But do you have any tips on closing deals when running sessions online, rather than it was a bit easier when we could kind of meet people in person and have a coffee, or meet and have a handshake. So has the closing process changed for you guys at all?
I would like to say a thing about closing. I think we're in a very weird moment now as well, where we're all sat at home on back-to-back Zoom calls, and we don't have that kind of like break up in between meetings. I think it's very difficult for people to make decisions on the same kind of level and speed that they would have before, because whereas you might get kind of like sold to in a meeting and you think, yeah, that's a great thing. What often happens now is you're straight into the next call straight away afterwards. And then suddenly it's like, you realize 3 days later that, hang on a minute, I had a call 3 days ago about something that was relevant. And I think previously you'd always have that.
Oh no, just getting to the good bit.
I was going to say, my experience, well, Dino reconnects, is the closing is taking much longer than it has previously, and making decisions is taking a lot longer than it has previously. So if anybody has advice for me, I would greatly appreciate it. But things that we kind of think are right there across the line, all of a sudden are taking a bit longer. It's COVID, like it's definitely not as quick as it used to be.
Yeah, I think unless it's so certainly what I've seen is the same, Martina. Some of the kind of more the planned or the bigger projects, or I think because people are also just not in the office together anymore. They can't just run and check with whoever, their CEO or whoever it might be, to get sign off or make that. They can't get together to make that decision so easily. So naturally that's going to mean certain things, certainly when you're following those older processes, take a little bit longer to get across the line. What I have seen speed up a lot is more of the, I guess, kind of opportunities where if someone's got an itch to scratch and they need to do it quickly. And Mona, that's probably what you guys had. You had this plan for an online store. I'm assuming when COVID hit, your urgency to get that done was even more important because it was a route to market that you needed and needed quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And despite all the urgency that was required and to push the project as quickly as possible, it definitely took me a lot longer because, like Dino said, everyone's in back-to-back Zoom calls. It was just, there wasn't the time that you would have typically to be able to really sit and have time with an agency and talk to them and then have time to reflect afterwards. It's completely slowed down the process, and even though we did launch it on time in the end, we probably would have, if we weren't doing it but everything virtually, we probably would have been able to select an agency much sooner if it hadn't have been done virtually, just because I just needed so much time to think and reflect, and way more than meeting in person.
What could agencies do to help? What are the closing tips then? To be honest, I don't know. I have always managed to close deals quite well, but I'm not sure if I've got any top tips when it comes to closing. What I don't like to do personally is hound people. So I think if they're making a decision, they're making a decision. But I do think one thing that I've always done quite naturally is always asked for when you've done your pitch, or when you're delivering your training or your demo or whatever it might be. I do think what's important is to set a timeline to go, okay, cool. So should we get a time to chat in next week or tomorrow, or however quick your timeline is, so that you've got those touch bases in already committed to? Because if you don't, then you're having to chase them up and they're busy and they've gone on to the next thing. That's when you lose it. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, or if that's particularly how you close a deal. I certainly would never be someone that is continually chasing up, because I think if they're going to make a decision, they're going to make a decision. But I do think making sure you've got check-ins and saying, is there anything that you need from me to help you? Do you need any more information? Do you want me to set up a call with any of our experts? It's what I always kind of say is help them solve the problem. Don't sell to them. Just try and be helpful where you can be. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that, Martina.
Yeah, I'd say it's a similar kind of thing, or just if we're hosting a webinar, or if we've just put out a a report that's kind of relevant to them, I'll kind of send that to them to kind of show a bit more added value in terms of, you know, what we do offer as an agency. But yeah, I completely agree, kind of having those set times that you're going to check back in. And then also just kind of remember, it's not always personal, and, you know, people are, you know, we're all living through a pandemic right now, so things are just a little bit different to how they normally are.
Definitely, yeah, the world is a bit topsy-turvy still. And thank you for my birthday wishes, Malek and others. It was my birthday. I'm old, officially old or older now. So just before we close, I am going to launch our poll. Yeah, please, everyone, do give it an answer if you're still with us. And I will give you a bit of a recap on the results from last month's poll, or the kind of changes that we're seeing happening. So most agencies, every month actually, we've seen that most agencies have done more from a marketing perspective. So consistently that's been sat at around 70%. So well done, everyone. That's definitely the right thing to do. You know, marketing through a pandemic, not just agencies, it's what we're telling our clients to do, right? Certainly ones that are working kind of in more of the marketing space and digital. So yeah, in fact, we hosted an event with another client, and All Saints were talking about how they have, and Foot Locker, I've been speaking to, who've got, it's coming on the podcast soon, both of them having done more from a marketing perspective has meant that they've actually got more market share, and they're having some of their best months from sales ever. I'm sure that's the same for you, Mona. Where, I mean, some advertising doesn't need to happen anymore, but marketing, I think, and pushing out content, super important. In terms of winning new business, most agencies are continuing to win new business with about, again, consistently 70% of you every month. Most of you still kind of interested in hearing and getting help with prospecting, but I'm interested to see if that changes. I'm certainly hearing a lot about pitching at the moment, and we've discussed that quite a bit today, so interested to see what comes out after today. Yeah, and in terms of the kind of areas of focus and where people are seeing most success from their marketing activity, certainly, you know, thought leadership content, blogs, insights, white papers are still right up there, probably with webinars being a close second. In fact, there was quite a shift change from May and June, and July actually be a lot more people doing a lot more thought leadership content. So yeah, there's some interesting stats. We will pull it into, now we've got 4 months worth since we started doing this, we will put a little infographic together that we can share with everyone. But yes, I guess it just leaves me with, I always have more to say. And Dino, sorry we lost you there mid-flow. We only have
apologies.
We only have a minute.
I think someone's drilled through my internet connection, so I'm now on mobile.
Martina kind of answered it for you, but if you've got anything to share, then do maybe write it up and we can send it round, because I know probably people have the rest of the place to get off to. But yeah, thank you so much to all of our wonderful guests this week. And do keep an eye on our website. We will be sharing the content and we'll have the videos. So if you've got people that you would like to share this with, please do. And also a little shout out to our sponsors. We have now sponsors for this webinar series and also my podcast, which is really great. They are called Just After Midnight, and they are a fantastic company that help agencies do 24/7 support, which I know from working at agencies. And we always say that we can do it, but you've got a developer with a phone next to the bed. These guys really do 24/7 support. So if you need 24/7 support for any of your campaigns or your work, please check them out. They've got a fantastic partner program, and they will give you first month free if you go onto their website, justaftermidnight247.com/street. Yeah, there we go. That's my plug done. Thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your days.